Welcome to the Lifestyle Chase. This podcast features high performers who have found a way to live their best life while balancing their health, wellness, friends, and family. Proudly hosted by me, Chris Little. Without further ado, let's get started.
Here we are for the first episode of 2019, episode 21, with the one and only DJ Bradley James. How are you today?
Good, Chris. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you for waking up nice and early for this one.
Not too early. Early for a DJ, but not early in the grand scheme of things.
So what's a typical day like for you?
Typical day for me. That's a great question. Every day is very, very different. Some days can be very relaxing, which I like because that's kind of an effect of owning your own business and kind of working when you want to work. And some days can be absolutely jam-packed. So there can be days where I'm just kind of, put in 3 or 4 hours of really good work on my computer, replying to quote requests and working on mixes and downloading music and that kind of stuff. And then there's days where I'm running from event to event to event, from, 8 in the morning to 2 a.m., 2:30 a.m. the next morning. So, it really can look like anything. And I have, I'm sure as we'll get into, I have kind of my hands in a lot of different things. So sometimes that keeps me quite busy.
Totally.
Yeah.
Let's go back to your high school years. What kind of a high school kid were you?
I was an athlete mostly. I was someone where high school came quite easily academically for me. Like I never really had to study hard or work hard or anything like that, it's a story that you hear all the time, and then you hit university and it's a huge wake-up call, and that was kind of the story for me. So high school was not to say that I'm like the brightest person in the world, but it came pretty easily to me. I was on honors roll, that kind of thing. But I think I went home right after school maybe like 3 times in my whole 3 years of high school. I was always had a practice or a game or something, and I was involved in sports and extracurricular throughout high school, and I found that really rewarding.
Yeah. What kind of sports did you play?
In high school, I played basketball, volleyball. I did track. I did badminton. And I think that was probably it. And then I played sports outside of school as well. I played baseball. I think that would probably be it.
Damn.
Yeah. So pretty busy. Basketball and volleyball being the main things. Basketball being my favorite. Volleyball kind of being like all the basketball guys just played volleyball in the off season to do something and be together and have the camaraderie and play sport. But basketball was the love for sure.
So are you like Edmontonian born and raised, or did you grow up somewhere outside of Edmonton?
Born in Edmonton, and then was here up until the 6th grade, halfway. That's an absolute lie. An absolute lie. I was born in Edmonton, was here until 2nd grade. Halfway through 2nd grade, my dad got transferred to head office in Toronto for his work, so we moved out to Ontario. We lived in Oakville, just outside of Toronto, for almost 4 years. And then the cool thing was that I was able to come back to the same elementary school that I was in grade 6. My dad left that job and took a job back in Edmonton. And so I was able to kind of reconnect with old friends and go back to the same school. And it was kind of an easy transition back into life, moving twice in 4 years as a kid. So that was nice. And then I went with all those same friends to junior high and high school and university at the U of A. And then after university, I've been some back and forth. I've lived in Toronto a little bit, just with relationships and some jobs and stuff like that. I've been a little bit back and forth, but Edmonton's been my main home over my lifetime.
How would you describe like living in the Toronto area in comparison to Edmonton?
Very different. Mostly, the biggest thing for me would be I mean, as a kid, you don't really get it because I was living in like a suburb, like it would have been like a kind of a St. Albert type thing, right? Like, so I was friends with the kids on my street and we played ball hockey and whatever, right? But going back as an adult was one really interesting because I got to relive a lot of those things I did as a kid, like going into the city for a Raptors game or a Blue Jays game or something, and do that as an adult and kind of see how special that is after living in Edmonton for a long time, where that level of energy and stuff doesn't really exist. It's not quite as big of a city. But the biggest difference for me was obviously it's much bigger. There's always a lot more going on, which was really exciting. But the downfall, I think, was that people aren't quite as friendly and open as they are here. We take it for granted. Western Canada and especially Albertans, I believe, are very, very open and they don't really have like those blinders up. And I think people in other parts in bigger cities, I guess, in other parts of the country and the world, they're all in their own little bubble. They all have everything going on, which makes sense. You can't be, open to every single person and worried about their things or whatever. And you kind of just have to have your blinders on and be focused on you, or you're going to kind of get left in the dust a little bit. Whereas here, people are happy to let someone onto the bus in front of them or hold the door for somebody or take that extra minute, because if you do that, you're not going to, it's not crazy enough life that you're going to get left behind. And maybe that's just my theory as to why it exists, but it's definitely just a more friendly kind of open vibe that I get in Alberta versus in bigger cities like Toronto and even Vancouver when I visit there.
And it's cool to think about because like in the last few years I've seen so many people from like our fitness industry make the move from Edmonton to Toronto. Mm-hmm. And like usually it's just them on their own, and I'm thinking like, oh, what a culture shock, hey? Like,
oh yeah, absolutely.
I can only imagine having to completely make new friends and sort of come up with your new routine. Yeah. Where you're going to go to, like, a lot of these people are moving for studios or for work, like mm-hmm. fitness related. Mm-hmm. So they kind of have like a start to their foundation. They probably have like their studio that they left for, or like their career that they left for, but then they have to build all those other blocks. Yeah, it was
super weird growing up with like like Edmonton's small, right? Like everyone knows everyone. Excuse me. Everybody knows each other. You have this massive friend group. You've never really had the pressure of making new friends. And then to make a move as like an 18, 19-year-old who like has never had the pressure of making new friends in their like kind of adult life was definitely different. And it was a cool experience because I went there not really knowing anybody. I was in a relationship. Didn't even live with the person that I was in a relationship with. So I was kind of just like on my own. Had a couple friends there from back home that were going to school and stuff that I'd meet up with. But I had to make a whole new group of friends through a job that I got and whatnot. So, but it was a great learning experience.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, what were the top 3 things that you learned from that experience?
That's a fantastic question. One, to be a little bit more independent. Like there were like that was probably the first time that I felt like lonely and like homesick. I've traveled quite a bit and stuff, and I've missed lots of Christmases and whatever, and I never really feel super homesick. I know that my family's there and waiting for me, and they're happy for me that I'm doing things and seeing the world. But living alone in a different city, especially I was in a relationship but I wasn't living with that person. I'm like, why am I here? Like, is this the right decision? It was the first time that I really got introspective and thought about what the decisions I'm making now are kind of impacting the rest of my life, and that was a little bit daunting and it made me a little bit lonely, but it also helped me be a lot more independent and start to think in that way of like the little actions I take every day are kind of compounding to dictate how the rest of my life is gonna play out. So that was cool. Number 2 was like just be open and friendly to every single person you meet, because you never know who's can be a friend. Like everyone is a stranger until they're a friend, right? Like which was really eye-opening for me, because it was like you don't really, when you have a really good group of friends and a big group of friends like I had in high school, you never really had to put in the effort with strangers. Like, it's like they're there, and if they want to come be our friend, great. But if not, like, I don't really care. I have my own friends, which sounds really conceited. But if you think about it, like, a lot of people operate that way, right? Like, they don't really put in the time with strangers because they're like, well, I'm good. Like, I've got my friends, or I've got my relationship, or I've got my family. Yeah, I'm cool. You know what I mean? But you never know what'll come out of a relationship. And I have friendships that I made during that time that I was in Toronto, that I still hold to this day, and would visit them if I went out there, and follow their life, with a lot of intrigue on social media and stuff. So yeah, it's really, really interesting. And a lot of them have actually turned into things that have been prosperous for us both career-wise and stuff as well. So the biggest thing I think I learned, I don't know if that was 3 things, but the biggest thing I learned for sure was that, and to just to treat everyone as a friend from day one, and be open to, and treat everyone kindly, and be open to meeting new people, because you never know what'll happen, right?
Yeah, it's good attitude. Like, a lot of the time, like, we'll see somebody in a big space, and we won't know too much about them, but we'll kind of look them up and down, feel like we can have them all figured out.
Yeah. Make an assessment, and that's who they are in your head, right?
Yeah. Like, the thing with how I am as a person is, generally a lot of people think I'm fairly quiet and there's not much to me, just kind of a blank slate. And I think it's so cool when a person, like, gives me that chance to sort of, like, open up to them, because just like anybody else, there's a lot of layers to me. Like, we're all like onions. You just kind of peel open the layers.
Yeah.
Yeah. The onion might look a little funny at first, but you just got to get to know that onion.
Totally. And the biggest thing to me is, like, people, when you don't, like, I talk quite a bit, and I'm pretty outgoing, and I kind of have to be in what I do. But when I first meet, or if I'm in a big group of people that I don't know, like, I'm quite quiet, and I feel like you might be the same way. And the thing that we assume a lot of the time is that quiet people maybe just aren't, like, don't have as much to offer, because, like, they're not just, you don't know what they're up to, or what they're doing, or how they are, because they're not constantly telling you.
Yeah.
So I think that's something society kind of, they always assume that the quieter people in the group are just, like, simpler, and they can, like, oh, it's just, oh, that's Chris, he's just, like, the quiet, nice guy.
Yeah.
Right? But it's like, you have so much more to offer, but they don't give you that chance. And if you're not constantly talking about it, and, like, just almost pushing it in people's faces, then they'll never kind of know. So it's this weird thing that we're in, with, like, so much in society. There's so much stuff going on, and so many things, like, so many stimuli is the word I'm looking for, that it's weird. Like, you want to kind of show off what you're doing, because that's just how people will learn about you, but then you also don't want to come across as, like, arrogant and cocky and stuff, right? So
totally,
it's interesting.
We're on the same level there. So I want to hear more about your university experience. What was that like? Like, did you know what you were gonna do going out of high school? What did you do? What was the whole experience like?
Yeah, no. No. Essentially, my parents were kind of, like, they were however parents, they which I mean, I love them for it. They really pushed me, and they really helped with those decisions. But they always were like, education is important. You need to go straight into university. Maybe if you take a year off or whatever, you'll never go back. But so I went right into it. I went to U of A. I had good marks. I had the grades to do it. I didn't even think really about going anywhere else. Both my parents went to the U of A. Easy place to go. You can live at home, save a bunch of money. We have this beautiful, world-renowned university right in the middle of our city, which is not very common. And so that was a really cool opportunity, and it didn't really even cross my mind to go anywhere else. So went right into university, mostly because that was just kind of like what you do in kind of my circles and my family. And because I enjoyed science, or did well in science in high school, I went into general sciences at the U of A. With no idea, like, I mean, maybe a little bit of an idea of, like, oh, medicine would be cool, and that might also be a little bit of a plant that was in my brain. And, like, every kid in first year university, it's like, who's going to go to medicine? Like, 80% of kids, like, raise their hand, because no one knows what else. What other jobs are there? Like, My dad's talking to me about being an engineer. I was like, what is an engineer? Like, what do they do? And he's like, everything. And I was like, I don't know what that means. You know what I mean? Like an engineer can, and I get it now after having friends who are engineers and being close to them in university. But at the time, it's so hard to know what you want to be right at, like at that age. So, I went into sciences, general science. It was an eye opener for sure. Like, no one's holding your hand, no one's doing anything. So my grades suffered; they slipped a little bit. I was put on academic probation. I moved out in second year with some buddies, had some fun. That kind of led to my grades slipping a little bit, and just because like I wasn't really engaged. Like I was like, what am I doing here? Why am I here? What am I going to be? What am I going to do? Grades slipped. Had to like meet with the dean, chat about kind of how I could come back and continue to work on my degree, and we decided on a program that was called it was a Bachelor of Science with a specialization in environmental earth science, which was cool because I could see like I have this at the end of my program. It's like you finish these courses, you come out with an environmental science degree. Environmentalism is a massive movement right now. You live in Alberta where oil and gas is huge. Every one of these oil and gas companies has an environmental division, and it gives me kind of a purpose, right? Like, oh yeah, the world needs people who are thinking this way right now. So it gives me a little bit of a purpose. So I was like, great, let's do that. I have a lot of the prerequisites. It took me 5 years instead of 4 to finish, but once I got into that path, it kind of worked out a little bit better for me. Moved back home, focused on school, and ended up doing quite well. And then, so that's what I finished with in university.
Did you kind of go into that career path, or what happened afterwards?
I began to. I started. I did 3 summers with Alberta Environment, with the government here, which was an awesome summer job. I was so lucky to have it, and it was amazing as a summer student. And then I started working there right after I graduated as well. But shortly after, I was in that relationship that we mentioned earlier, and some complications with her family led me to move to Toronto. I was kind of like, well, I'm done university. We've been doing long distance for a while. Why are we still doing long distance if I'm not tied here anymore? She had a year of school left, so I took off to Toronto, and that's what made that move that we had chatted about earlier. And also at the time I was kind of like, okay, this was a great summer job, but I'm not really a guy who's gonna just work for the government for my whole career. The pace was really slow. It was pretty chill. I didn't really feel like I was making a huge impact, and it's just not someone who's like super excited and to get out into the world and make their mark and leave a legacy. It's not really the place to be. It was a lot of people who were like young with young families that needed something a little bit more stable, provide for their kids, provide for their family. And I obviously was not at that point. So I kind of felt a little bit like a fish out of water there. So I at that point I moved to Toronto, and I was looking for something a little bit more in the private sector. It was also in 2012, so it wasn't great economically for oil and gas, especially when oil and gas is down, a lot of that environmental stuff is kind of the first to go, because you don't really need them to make money. It's more just look good and try to make you a better company on the whole, but it's not like integral to like the business of the company. So there's buddies who are engineers and geologists and all that stuff. They're not working. It's like, obviously as an environmental scientist, I'm also not going to be working. So, and moving to Toronto, there's not as much out there either for that. So went out there, just worked another job. That was kind of my first introduction to like heavy retail. I worked at a company called Sporting Life out in Toronto. And that kind of led me down the path that I'm on today.
So when did you first start at Lululemon? Because you were there for a while, hey?
Yeah, I was there almost 3 years.
Nice.
So when I moved, I worked at Sport Check throughout high school a little bit, just here in Edmonton, selling skis and whatnot. I was a big ski racer growing up as well. So that kind of came naturally to me. I liked technical education. I like talking about products and stuff like that, and helping people find the right product for them so that they'd really enjoy the sport as well. Did that, and then when I went up to Toronto, I worked at Sporting Life there and did the same thing. Was one of the heads in the ski department there. Sporting Life, if you're not familiar, is like, it's in Calgary now as well. It's essentially a Canadian like Nordstrom's. that started in the north of Ontario, up in their kind of ski area. And so I worked there for a while, and then when I came, my details are a bit fuzzy actually, but I came back, that relationship didn't work out in Toronto, came back home. I ended up working for Labatt for a while as a sales rep for them, and then when I was still in, so I came back actually, was still in the relationship long distance, waiting for her to come to Edmonton because that was kind of the idea. She ended up not coming to Edmonton. This whole time I was at Labatt, and when that didn't work out, then I was like, all right, well, now I'm just kind of like in this weird thing, like this weird funk, and I ended up leaving Labatt and going on a big trip. So I went on a big trip for the first time, and then when I came back from that trip, a friend who worked at Lululemon actually asked me to DJ at Lululemon Kingsway for Black Friday in the store. I honestly don't think, Chris, that I even owned a piece of Lululemon at the time.
Yeah.
Like I was like, what? She's like, just wear something kind of athletic. Like I remember not having Lululemon to wear to this event.
Yeah.
And they sent me up there and I played, and I honestly, like, maybe I'd stepped inside the White Ave Lululemon a couple times, but just like never really even been around it or knew what it was about. And I DJ'd this event, and like the energy around me and the people around me and the people that I interacted with that worked there, it was just unbelievable. It just blew my mind. I wasn't looking for a job. I wasn't looking for anything. I was unemployed at the time, but I was just there for like a DJ gig. And I just became like friends with everyone that was working that day. And the store manager, we had like an awesome conversation, and essentially she was like, offered me a job on the spot, like come work here. And I was like, I couldn't say no. I'm unemployed. I don't know what I'm doing. I just worked retail. I enjoyed it. I'm down for the conversation at least, right? So met with her. They were going to bring me to Kingsway. Kingsway was full at the time, so they sent me over to the store manager at West Edmonton Mall. Met with her and chatted about kind of goals and what I wanted to do, and I started at West Ed a couple weeks later, and then there was some on and off about being part-time, full-time, all this kind of stuff, but eventually just fell in love with the company and the culture, and went full-time there for almost 3 years.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And with Sport Check, which stores were you at?
I was at the South Park location.
Cool.
Yeah.
Did you ever come across Murray Bischoff?
No, I don't think so. Doesn't sound familiar.
Yeah.
No.
He was one of the managers at the West End, or the West Edmonton Mall location.
Okay.
And then they opened up a location in Wetaskiwin.
Yeah.
And so I got hired on full time there, and I became like the footwear manager.
Oh, nice.
And then when I moved to Edmonton, I moved in like 2011.
Mm-hmm.
And then I eventually became a department sales manager for hard goods at the city center location.
Oh, really?
So we got Sport Check in common.
Nice. I love that.
Kind of cool. Like there's so many people that's like I've kind of had the right connection at the right time because of Sport Check.
Yeah.
It's just funny how like we meet a person and then later on it's just handy that we had met that person because it lines things up.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of the owners of Raising the Bar Training and Performance, where like I do my training out of, he was actually at the Londonderry Sport Check.
Oh, no way.
And so I had met him at a product knowledge session for hockey.
Yeah.
And so I knew who he was. I had him on social media. I have a few other like connections with him, but that was one that really resonated. And I was, well, this guy is cool.
Yeah.
His gym is 5 minutes from my house. This will work perfect.
Sure.
And it's just neat. Like, you never know the impact that meeting someone will have on you.
Yeah.
And like when I first heard of you, it was basically because you were doing DJ rides at spin studios and stuff, and I was like, well, these are popular. They're selling out pretty fast. Like, he must be a really good DJ. And like, people always say good things about him, so that usually speaks to who you are as a person. Like, if you're kind of looking the other way and people are still saying nice things, that's a great thing. Mm-hmm. And then we actually got to meet in person. It was at Jordan Jeski's event, mm-hmm. the Project, mm-hmm. which is awesome. Like, if anybody's listening to this, make sure you check out that Project. I think his next one's like a hockey skating one or something.
Yeah, they're playing hockey in West Edmonton Mall.
That would be badass.
Yeah.
I can pick up speed, I just can't stop.
I'm not a hockey guy at all. Like, as much as I played sports growing up, like hockey, never played organized hockey. Not one time. No, just not it.
Master.
Yeah.
Just check it out anyways. I'll see what I'm up to. I might check it out.
Yeah.
And from that point, then I started working at Central. That was kind of like my job that saved my ass when I jumped all into fitness.
Yeah.
And then ran into you there too.
Totally.
Well, basically, I was already at Central. Then we realized we were both at Central.
Right.
And then we went to work after the project.
Right.
Which is funny.
And then I was like, oh, hey, yeah.
Such a small city. Like, everybody truly knows everybody. And if they think that they don't know everybody, they probably know somebody that knows that person that they don't know.
Like, very small degrees of separation.
Yeah. Like, it's hilarious. And you have to be kind of careful, like, who you are. Like, if you're not being a true, authentic person, you'll hear about it down the road, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which is nice. It's pretty simple to be just a nice human.
Yeah.
Like, if you keep to that path, then you're good to go.
I agree. Be genuine, authentic, and be nice to people, and you got it pretty much all sorted out, I think.
Totally. So, along with your sort of career path, your story, you were at Lululemon for 3 years, but then you left that to take on some new things. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so as you can tell, the time after, like, as soon as schooling ends for me, like, things get a bit crazy. Like, it just, like, there's all these weird timelines and like, I did there's a lot of jobs that we haven't even touched on, but there's, like, a lot of kind of contract jobs here and there, learning skills, figuring things out. At the time, it was kind of scary because I'm bouncing around jobs. Who's going to want to hire me? All this kind of stuff. And there's people in your ear that are saying, like, oh, you should stick with a company and gather some loyalty there and whatever. But nothing ever really felt right. And so I was doing kind of these contracts and taking the time in between those contracts to travel and see the world and kind of experience things that way. And then I found... So fast forward through all of that kind of mumbo jumbo, found Lululemon, was there for a few years, pretty much the past, up until a year ago. So last November I was at Lululemon pretty much full time. And during this entire thing, I've been DJing as a hobby on the side. So I started DJing in university, just kind of as a hobby in my bedroom on my laptop, kind of played some music at house parties and that kind of thing. Posted mixes online that friends would, put in their ear when they're working out at the gym or on the treadmill or at work or whatever it was, and that whole thing. And so that kind of just evolved eventually into actually me playing at bars and at parties and things like that. And so in the background this entire time throughout those several years, I was DJing. Just kind of as a hobby on the weekends and not every weekend, just kind of here and there. And then when I came back to Edmonton, I was working for Lulu, made some awesome connections, started doing more like fitness things, started meeting people out in the community, learning about how important community is and connecting to those people. And it started to really ramp up, and I started to play quite often in bigger bars, bigger clubs, bigger restaurants. Making good connections and using my DJing in ways that I didn't think I ever could, like fitness things and spin studios and all different sorts of events, right? And so that was great. Lululemon was the perfect complement to the DJ lifestyle. I could work. I had my manager let me have like this awesome schedule where I worked Sunday through Thursday and pretty much had Friday, Saturdays off. So I could DJ Thursday, Friday, Saturday night and have Friday, Saturday to recover. And then Sunday, my shift would start in the afternoon, so I could even sleep in on Sunday mornings. It was pretty much nonstop. I'm working 7 days a week essentially, but it let me do what I love to do. And so it didn't really feel that overwhelming. But after 3 years at Lulu, I started to kind of feel like I was a bit in a rut, and the DJing was like starting to take over a little bit, and there was things that I would have to say no to from like on the DJ side because was full-time at Lululemon as well, and I was getting more and more responsibilities there and asking to take on different roles there. And I don't know what would have happened if I just had to make a decision, but it was lucky because my decision was pretty much made for me. Currently, I'm playing ultimate frisbee at a pretty competitive level, and my team, based on how they did in the Canadian Nationals over the past several years, was offered the opportunity to go to the Pan American Championships for ultimate frisbee, which was in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and that was last November. And so I said to Lulu, hey, listen, I'm gonna go down. I want to play in this. Obviously, my team's going. It's not fully funded. Like, I'm paying for myself to get down there. So I kind of want to go for a while. Can I take a bit of a hiatus and go down and play this and travel around a bit afterwards? And I mean, you've worked retail. Going somewhere in November when you're an integral part of the biggest Lululemon in the world is a hard thing to do. And they said, no, if you want to go, you'll have to like leave and come back to Lulu after you come back. And I said, that makes total sense, absolutely. But I need to go do this, so I'm gonna go do that. And with kind of the intention of coming back to Lulu when I was done. And then went on this trip and. I ended up bringing my girlfriend with me. She had just finished all her schooling, and we had kind of sat down and said, okay, well, if I'm leaving my job and you're done your university now, like, how long should we go for? We were thinking like a month, hang out a few weeks after the tournament. And we said, well, what do we really need to be back for? Let's go as long as we possibly can. And the way that weddings work for a DJ, you're booking them obviously like a year in advance. So I had some weddings booked for the next like May time, and so he said, well, why? What if we just go till May? And that's what we did. So we went on a 6-month trip through South America after that tournament. Allowed me to do a lot of thinking about what I wanted to do and what was next, kind of in my life. And I'd always had a goal. Like, Lululemon's big on goal setting, and I'd always had a goal to start my own company and have my own DJ company, entertainment company, and have some people who would work for me and go do events so that I could do multiple things per day, especially weddings and events and those types of things. Because I was getting to the point where people were requesting that of me, and I would have to say no. And I was like, this is not a smart business decision. I should be able to say yes to this. And so fortunately I had these 6 months of traveling and sitting on buses and beaches and laying in my hostel bed and whatever to think about what I really wanted when I got back, and kind of make all of the moves in my head, and had notes on my phone and everything. And when I got back to Edmonton, I went to Vancouver on the way home, chatted with some really close friends of mine about kind of these decisions and what was coming next. And when I got it back to Edmonton, I felt super, super clear and was able to just pull the trigger on everything and start my own DJ business. And leave kind of that regular 9-to-5 in the past, which has always been my goal because it's never really suited me, and started my own company, and then that's what I've been doing since I've been back in May. So that's what 2018 has looked like.
It's badass.
Yeah.
And then you've had a role with Poppy Barley too, right?
Yeah. So the Poppy Barley thing was a bit of me hitting the panic button as soon as I got back. But it also is kind of what I want to be able to do is supplement, like similar to what you do. You supplement kind of jumping into the fitness industry full time with kind of other things that aren't super. They don't like take a ton of brain power. They're not like taking a lot of your attention or your energy. Like, they're just things that are there that can like supplement that income a little bit. And so it was a little bit me pushing the panic button because I'd never had the freedom of owning my own business. So when I started my own business in May, it was like the first day of that was just such a weird thing for me. I like woke up, it was Monday morning, everyone was going to work, and I kind of just like sat in my apartment and was like, okay, now what? You know what I mean? Like,
that's extremely relatable.
Especially after I'd done all like when I got back, it was like boom, pedal to the metal, right? Like I moved back, I didn't have an apartment yet. I was like in my parents' basement, and I just every day I was on my laptop building the website, building the social media channels, going to the registry to register things, getting the insurance, all this, like all the things that like were on my list to check off.
Yeah.
But then once that was all done, it's like, and that was also, that's not easy. Like, I had a lot of people who are maybe thinking about starting up their own business. That's like really, really stressful. And it was for me. Like, that was a huge thing that I had to like overcome in order to make this happen. But once you kind of get the ball rolling, like literally everything you read that says like, just jump, just do it, just go, just try it. And then like, it'll work out. It's like 100% true. As soon as you make that leap of faith, it's like, oh yeah, this actually isn't that bad. And there's people there to guide you. Like, I was so nervous about like, how do I even create a business? Like, how do I start it? How do I name it? How do I get that done? I went to AMA and just like stood there looking around. Like, I had no idea what to do. And then this like nice old lady who was like at the registrar's office was like, or the registry office. I was like, oh yeah, don't worry, I do this all the time. Took me into a room and walked me through like everything. She's like, these are the 3 types of businesses, and like, and like, so it was like, I knew nothing, right? Like, I'm not, I guess I was never in business in school or whatever, right? So that was kind of what I was doing. And then once I had that all figured out, business bank account, all this kind of stuff, then that first day of like running the business came, and like from being a whole life of like, you wake up and go to work and just like sit down at your computer and do your day. I was like literally sitting at my computer just like, what now? Like, what do I do? And you know, just started making social media posts and kind of writing on wedding buy and sells, trying to like get people's business and replying to quote requests and you know, figuring out contracts and all this kind of stuff. And so at that moment I was like, okay, I still have a lot of like downtime during the week and like the middle of my day. And I'm someone who's just been like, as you can tell, it was 7 days a week for 3 years, where it was like go. Like there was no downtime at all. And to have that downtime freaked me out a little bit. So I was like, okay, I need to get something else going. Like, I have time, I should do something else. And that's when I approached Poppy Barley, and I knew Kendall from Lululemon. She's an ambassador there. Kendall is the owner of Poppy Barley, for those who don't know. Approached her about her men's business, because I did that with Lulu for a while, helped them grow their men's business. And I was there for 4 months on a contract just to kind of see how it goes, just like half time. And it was amazing. But it's a company that's growing like crazy and is doing so well. It was taking a ton of like more of my time than I wanted to. And at the end of the 4 months, I had a really good conversation with Kendall about, you know, just like what my life was looking like at that moment. And by that time, I had started to kind of figure out the ownership of business and how you kind of spend your time. And because you can work really hard for 3 or 4 straight hours, you can like, because in the general office environment, you have an 8-hour workday, but it's proven and it's researched that there's not that much work going on in that 8 hours, right? Like, you're really only putting in a solid 3 or 4 hours. The rest is like, you know, filler with meetings and maybe not being 100% productive. So if you can be productive for that 3 or 4 hours, and then you can have the rest of your day to yourself, to look after yourself, go to the gym, work out, whatever that may look like for you. And so once I started to figure that out, it was Poppy Barley kind of was like, okay, yeah, you're doing too much now. It was great, and I learned a ton, and I'm appreciative for that. But it was a bit overwhelming. And when I got home from even the half-time job that I was working at Poppy Barley, I was like, oh, I'm exhausted. I don't want to focus on my own business. So it was kind of it was harming that. And so at the end of that 4 months, we decided to say bye for now. I'll still help them out with things here and there, but and I would like to continue to do that with other businesses. Be able to kind of be a consultant on the side or do things with sales and marketing for businesses while I continue to run my own company as well.
It's so cool because like a company like that, for me, from the outside looking in, it's on brand with who you are. Like they're local, they're fairly community focused, like they're integrated into a lot of different events, supporting a lot of like good people in the city. And so it makes sense for you to do something like that. Totally. And it's so cool that you're able to like nurture those relationships that have started from past jobs, past things, and like move forward in a positive way that is good for both sides.
Yeah, no, it's that's a big belief of mine, and after working at Lululemon is that community kind of aspect, and it's the people you know and the people that you meet that really define who you are and what you can do and how you can succeed. And Edmonton's so cool and tight knit. Like we said, it's small, and we were kind of talking about it in a negative way earlier, but it's such a cool thing because the people who are doing things and moving things and shaking things, they're all connected, and to be part of that circle is an honor and really, really amazing. And it's a great thing to be a part of. And I think it's definitely I don't have a technical background in business or sales or marketing or anything like that, but it's just the people that I've known that I can owe my success to, because they are the ones who have taken a chance on me and just the person who I am versus what, maybe on the piece of paper that I have hung up on my wall kind of thing. Right. So, really appreciate the companies and the people that have taken those chances on me and brought me on board and taught me that kind of stuff. And yeah, I can't stress how important it is to be connected and to and really focus on people, because at the end of the day, that's kind of what is really gonna help you succeed.
That's what life is about. We're just a bunch of humans on this planet.
Yeah.
And to survive, we gotta be nice.
Yeah, it sounds simplified, but it really is. We're all just in this planet trying to figure out how to survive together, right?
Yeah.
So, I completely agree. It's what life's about is the people you meet. So,
who are the 5 most impactful people that you have met in your life?
Oh,
I got all the tough questions.
That's a tough one. Holy cow. 5 most impactful. I'll start with the family side of things, because those are people who I've met my whole life and who raised me and that kind of thing. And I'll lump my parents into one person, but they're very hard workers, and they push themselves a lot, and they push me a lot, which is a good thing. And it's also taught me to maybe not work a bit smarter and not as hard. We definitely have different opinions on things, but at least I have that work ethic and show up on time and do it's just crazy. I saw this thing, it was on Instagram the other day, and it was show up on time and do what you say you're going to do, and you're already ahead of half the pack, right? And so it's that was really, really instilled in me from a young age, which has continued to help me be successful. And has really impacted me. It's also impacted me in a way that I've seen kind of what that 9 to 5 sales kind of working life looks like. My dad wasn't home a lot when I was a kid and stuff. He was always on the road traveling and working hard. Obviously to support for the family, and we had an awesome life growing up. But it allows me to kind of take a look at myself and say, hey, do I want that? What do I value? And as I get into an age where I'm thinking about starting a family and that kind of stuff, it's what do I want for that stage of my life? What do I want it to look like? So they have been incredibly impactful in multiple ways for how I'm going to live my life. Based on what their values are, I can take those, process them, and then kind of spit out my own version of that. I also was really impacted a lot, and I think about my grandparents a lot. My grandparents on the one side have both passed away now, but they were to me, they were the epitome of love in a relationship. They in their 80s were they would never argue, and they were always on each other's side, even if they disagreed. They always supported each other. They held hands and helped each other out in that old age while walking up a slight incline, as grandparents do. And they were nice and sweet to everyone they met. And so there was a lot of times if I needed an escape that I would go over, even I don't know if this I think some people have this type of relationship, but some people are just why? I was in high school and I'd drive over in grade 12 to sit at my grandparents' house and chat with them for a couple hours, just to kind of as a release and just to kind of like have a different opinion on life and stuff. And now looking back on it, I wish I would have done it even more, because they're obviously so wise and so insightful, and had so many things to share. Like I didn't really hear about their life until like very late, like how they grew up and the struggles they went through. And I mean, because of all those struggles is the reason that I'm here talking to you today. And so they were very, very impactful in my life, and I would like to work on having that. Still have my other grandparents around, and I want to work on having that relationship a bit more with them. And I would urge anyone out there to take the advice of grandparents or elders, because they've seen it all. They know sometimes they're not 100% there mentally, so it's hard for them to get those thoughts across to you. But if you sit there and listen hard enough, they'll surprise you and give you some really good life lessons. So that's number 2, I guess, is those grandparents were super helpful. I don't know. There's so many people out there. I would say there were a lot of coaches throughout the years that were super, super helpful. I had, when I was really young playing basketball, it was obviously dads that were helping a lot with the team. I had Mr. Suderman and Mr. Bose were my original basketball coaches, and they were like the perfect mentors as far as like how sport should go and how it should be played, and how like that level of compete should be, and but how to respect your opponents and work hard and practice hard, and like how to play the game properly, and leave your ego on the side and whatever. So like from a very young age, all of those things were instilled in me through the sport that I loved, which was really amazing and really helpful. So shout out to those guys as well. And I've been lucky enough to have awesome coaches throughout high school and stuff too. Modi Amory was my basketball coach in high school. Mr. Carter was my coach in volleyball in high school. They were both amazing human beings, could talk to them about anything, and again, really instilled the right values in sport. They weren't those guys who are breaking clipboards and getting super upset. It's like they understand that these kids are students, they are kids, and they're there to like have fun. They'd obviously love to win, but it's not the end of the world. The main thing is to really have a good time and learn some stuff and make some friends, and that's the values that they instilled in us, which was fantastic. In the work side of things, like career side of things, I've met some amazing people and had some awesome managers. A lot that I haven't really got along with. Like a lot of people that I've met throughout my career don't manage the way that a way that works for me. The first manager that I have felt a real connection with and been in awe of, honestly, is my manager recently at Lululemon. Her name's Caitlin McIntyre. You probably know who she is. She's very significant in Lululemon in Edmonton, and she's the store manager of West Edmonton Mall right now. And it's interesting, if you're not familiar with Lululemon, you're going to think like why is a retail manager the most impactful person you've met in your entire life? But Lulu really attracts amazing people. And the way that Caitlin is able to lead, putting her people first and leading with fun, and it's amazing how elegant she leads without really bossing anyone around, or it's almost like she's your friend and she's having fun but she gets shit done. Like, and that is what I'm so in awe of, is people who can be themselves, have fun, be authentic, and joke around while still getting everything done and going above and beyond what is asked of them. And she does that amazingly. And during my time at Lulu, I was like, that is the person that I want to work to be, and I'll carry that into other things in my life as well. How many is that? 4?
Yeah. You lump so many of them together, so I'm like,
that's fair.
Man, he could have been done.
I could have been done, but I like to make it difficult on myself.
Yeah, no, that was awesome.
If one comes up to me, one comes to me when I'm thinking more, I'll let you know. But
honestly, those were so good. Like, I resonate with those. Like, I totally see it too. And just like speaking of Lululemon, like the way that they built their company is so like with so much thought. Mm-hmm. It's not so much a money machine. Like they do it so consciously. Mm-hmm. So that is totally why you would look up to a leader in that company.
Yeah.
Like,
and I like to, and I mean, I don't know if other people would talk about kind of bigger figureheads, like people a little bit more famous that they've met or whatever that have left an impact on them. But to me, it's the people that I interact with like on a daily basis and see all the time that like really impact me the most. And try to surround myself with people like that, right? Like you're kind of a manifestation, I think, of like the people say of like the closest 5 people around you or 10 people around you.
Yep.
And I think that's super true, and it's important to keep the people that really mean a lot to you super close. Being at Lulu, everyone there is just like unbelievable, so like-minded and everything. And yeah, I think just really impressed with how Kate runs things. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Hopefully she listens to this.
I think she will. I hope she cries. Yeah. No, she's awesome. We were hanging out at a wedding on New Year's Eve. So yeah, she's great. And everyone at Lulu who's listening, you guys are doing a great job. So keep doing what you're doing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about music with you.
Okay.
So when you first started getting into DJing, it was probably like you just kind of liked putting playlists together. Mm-hmm. How'd you pick your music? Like, you just kind of go through songs, listen to the radio? What do you do? What's your strategy?
Now or at the beginning?
Take me through the whole process.
Okay. I've always been musical. Grew up playing piano and was in band and all that kind of stuff. So I had the music kind of theory down, kind of ingrained within me, like just kind of I just kind of know what sounds good together or like how it goes. So that kind of helped with everything. I honestly can't even remember why, or like I can remember when, but I can't remember why I started DJing, or even like mixing music together or anything. It was kind of it was a big thing like during university for me, like in the first couple of years. It was just kind of when it kind of took off. And you know, the guys like David Guetta and Cascade and all these guys were kind of becoming household names, like the Tiestos and stuff of the world. Like people, they went from being like really underground, like what's this DJ thing? DJing has obviously been around for way longer than that, but it really started to come to the forefront. And I mean, it was when I moved out and was living with some buddies in second year university that some of the guys that I lived with and the guys that would come around were just kind of into like house music and EDM and stuff. And so I think that was probably where those first influences came from. I remember going to someone dragging me to a deadmau5 show. And it was like no one knew who deadmau5 was. No one knew how to say his name. It was like deadmau5. Like no one like deadmau5 wasn't a person. Like he was like this like weird producer guy from Toronto, and he was playing. I can't even remember where it was, but it was like not a big. Like it was like a lounge. Like it wasn't even a big venue. It obviously doesn't exist today, I don't think. But it was like so small. I remember just hearing him and the way that he like thinks about things and puts sounds together and how that turns into a song and all this stuff. And at the time, people were like getting criticized for using auto-tune and all this kind of stuff. I was like, it doesn't matter. Like music's music. You like heard that, and it was like it's like you don't have to have a guitar and drums and a singer and stuff to be real music. Like I think anything, and that was one of that kind of moment of clarity for me. And I started to like really be enthralled with like sounds and music and what sounds people could create without instruments and stuff like that. And like, how do people make these songs, and like, why do people, I'm still really, really enthralled by why certain songs are popular and why others aren't. Like, what makes the majority of the population like a song. And obviously that has to do with like chord progressions and certain notes and the way it sounds in your ear, and if can you guess what the next chord's going to be and all this kind of stuff. Like Chainsmokers are a perfect example. Like, they use a very formulaic way of making songs that they've found that people really like, and the biggest part of that is because the people who are listening, who aren't even musical, can kind of guess where that next, like what the next note is going to be, and there's no surprises. And so that's, I mean, I digress a little bit here, but that's kind of what I'm really intrigued by with music. And so stuff that I originally just like took to things that like made me excited or made me move or made me go, oh wow, like it sounded good in my ear. And to this day, those are still my favorite types of songs, and that's my favorite type of music. When people ask what my favorite type of music is, I always say just like, it's just stuff that sounds good in your ear. And so songs that kind of made me feel good and get up and want to move and whatever, those are kind of just the songs that I would pick. And I'd just like mash them all together and make a mix that sounded good, post it online, and people would start to really react to it quite well. And now when I listen to those mixes, it's absolute garbage. Like, it's so bad.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them are okay, but a lot of them, like, you look back and you're like, music was just at a different stage. Like, I look back and I'm like, oh gosh, like why? Like, I thought I put in like one of my original mixes, and if people are listening, I have these original mixes. If you want them, let me know. I can send them out. I can repost them. But like, I had these, I just thought, I thought Cheese was kind of cool. Like, where it was like a song that everyone knew that was like kind of cheesy and then would like go into like a cool drop. Yeah. Like, I have this Pirates of the Caribbean remix that I put into like one of my original mixes that I thought was like the shit. Like, it was like the be all end all. I was like, this is the coolest remix ever, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But like, going back on it, I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, it's just so ridiculous. And I'd have things like the Beatles mashup, like all these things that it was cheesy, like people knew the song, but then it was like a mashup of it or a remix of it. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And I still do like a bit of cheese, and that's, I think, what separates me from a lot of DJs is I like don't have a chip on my shoulder. I don't have to play the coolest stuff, and that's I think why I'm successful at Central. Like, Jesse talks about how the success of Central comes from not being like the coolest, newest, hippest place, but like over time just kind of being a fun place that people can go out and have a good time, and they kind of know what they're getting. And they can feel at ease. So we play the hits from like the 70s, 80s, 90s. Now like you can play Whitney Houston at midnight and people are going to go absolutely nuts. Like, you were probably there when I played All I Want for Christmas by Mariah Carey like just before Christmas, and it was like the craziest the bar went the entire night. So it's stuff like that, right, where I don't have this chip on my shoulder, this ego behind the music that I play. It's about the people and not about me. That I think at least the success and how I kind of pick my music. So I'm not that DJ who like knows the coolest up and coming underground DJ and producers and like what's the coolest new track or whatever. Like, that's not me. I'm more about how can I take stuff that is tried and tested and people enjoy and like to dance to and make that a bit more modern and smooth and fun to party to in the modern day.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, even like when you're DJing at Central on a night that I'm working, I'm like, oh, thank goodness, because like my anxiety over like going through the crowds of drunk people goes way down. Yeah. Like, this is nice. Like, I feel at peace. I feel at home. And you're choosing familiar songs that we all know and love. Every so often you get like a good one that's appropriate for the moment, like Move, Get Out the Way. Mm-hmm. Those are nice. Nice. Always helpful. But like, yeah, you're just kind of being true to who you are and what you like and consistent about it. And it's just such a good thing to have in life. Mm-hmm. And I can relate to the whole like sort of picking corny songs with like the beat drop. Because like when I was an instructor at True Ride, I probably spent like 6 hours in a 45-minute playlist, like to put it all together. Like I got to the point where I was like snipping songs. I was finding remixes on SoundCloud, taking like my favorite part, and it could be like 45 seconds of that, and just splicing it with other things. Like it was an art for me. Like I was trying to get next level.
Yeah.
And there were things about that were great, and now I'm realizing like sometimes you just have to pick a cluster of songs that resonate with a person and just put them together and just own it. Like just love that music, and people will resonate with that. Because like that's something that I miss about being a spin instructor, is like spending all that time on music. So it's ironic, like last night I actually just decided, I was like, screw it, I'm just gonna make playlists. So
I saw that, yeah, I saw
see
you
if
post
people
that,
like it.
Yeah,
and
that's
so
cool.
I'm just gonna, as if I'm an instructor, or as if like people are looking for my music, I'm just gonna post them.
Yeah.
And if people want to follow, they follow. If they don't, they don't. But I'm just gonna have a good time.
Yeah, no, I love it. And honestly, we've talked about authenticity and stuff like that a lot in a lot of different ways today, but I find I get the best response from a crowd when I'm authentically into what I'm playing. So if like I'm playing the stuff that I love, like if I'm moving from track to track to track, and I'm doing like 90s hip hop, R&B stuff that's just fun, and it has that feeling of nostalgia, and you can sing along, but you can like dance to as well. And if I'm in that groove and I'm having fun, that's when I think that the audience has the most fun as well. And it's just because that energy is contagious, and you can tell that I'm actually enjoying what I'm doing, as opposed to putting on track after track that just have to play. It's amazing when you can really enjoy what you're doing, and how that energy translates to the audience.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So we're at the start of a new year. What are 3 commitments you're gonna make to yourself this year?
Yeah, Happy New Year. 3 commitments to myself. I'm turning 30 this year, so that's a big one, and it's weighing over me a little bit. Not too much. Like, it's not like I'm not worried about it, but it's just I don't feel like I'm 30 ever, so it's really just it's jarring me into remembering what I'm at, and like, things start to hurt a little bit and stuff, and injuries with sports start to take a little bit longer to rehab. So the first thing that comes to my mind is a little bit of more of self-care. I'm not someone who likes to cook or eat well. I like to eat well, but I don't like the work that goes into it. So I would like to commit to eating healthier and eating well, and planning those meals. And because I do have a little bit more of the free time with owning my own business, I think that that's doable this year. And I've taken some steps to figure that out even at the end of last year. So that's number one. Take care a little bit more of myself, starting with eating a bit better. The second thing I'd like to commit to is growing my business. That's obviously not a measurable goal, but my goal, for those of you who don't know, I have an entertainment business that now specializes in DJing, but I'd eventually like to grow that into having more vendors and more of a kind of a one-stop shop for your entertainment and event needs. And so I'm working on bringing other vendors on board that are like-minded and would fit the aesthetic of an event or a wedding the same way that I do. And so I'm in the process of bringing on a photographer, which is really exciting. And I'd also like to, this year, bring on a couple other types of vendors, whether that be, a musician, a songwriter, or not a songwriter, but like a singer-songwriter, a florist, or whatever that may be. So if you're listening and you're interested in growing your business, let me know, and I'd love to collaborate. And the third thing that I would like to commit to do this year is work on my relationships. Because I'm busy and I'm doing so many things, I have a lot of connections, but not a lot of super deep connections. And with a lot of my really close friends from childhood and stuff not being in Edmonton anymore, they're off, crushing their goals and their dreams in other cities and other parts of the world. I would really like to dive deeper into the relationships that I have in the city now, or in my life now. And kind of like we talked about with the move to Toronto, really I have those connections, I have those friends, I have the followers, I have the friends on Facebook, but and it's always pleasant, and I like chatting with these people, but I'd like to delve a level deeper pretty much in all my relationships that I have.
That's awesome. Those are really good.
Yeah.
So we're going to go to our last and final question. This is something that I ask all of my guests. If you could give one piece of advice on how to authentically live your life to the fullest, what would it be?
Great question. I'm sure from listening to me, you can kind of understand kind of what my take on it is. I think that if you, it's as simple as like being nice and just living as your authentic self. Like, don't try to pretend to be anybody else. Do what makes you happy and be nice to everyone. And don't care about what other people are doing is the biggest thing, I think. I find myself comparing myself to strangers on the internet all the time.
Yeah, I think we all do.
It's just the time that we're living in. It's just harmful more than anything. So just worry about yourself. Don't worry about what other people are up to. It'll cause you a lot less stress and anxiety, and then you're also not judging other people for what they're up to. And just be kind. And I think that is the key. I have to pull this out, excuse me, but a friend of mine gave me an awesome piece of advice recently, because he said he feels like I'm living my life this way, and when he said it, everything just kind of like connected really well, but I want to make sure that I get the wording right, so I'm going to pull it up here. Good friend of mine named Dan Rose, who's doing awesome. Do you know who Dan Rose is?
Nope.
Anyway, he's doing awesome things in the city.
There's your fifth person.
Yeah, he's inspiring for sure. He does. He's big on historical stuff in Edmonton. So he's working hard to keep the history of Edmonton alive, and making sure that like these historical buildings and stuff in the city are being repurposed and not just like demolished for no reason. He's a big believer in Edmonton as a city, and he's doing cool things around here. So take a look at him if you're interested in that sort of thing. But the advice that he gave me, I'll just read it word for word here, and I'm not sure where he got it from, but I'm just going to give him credit. He says the secret to happiness and prosperity is to monetize your passions and subsidize your hobbies. And then if you nail those things, you'll never work a day in your life. Maybe you know where that quote's from. But it sounds familiar to me. It's from somewhere, obviously. Yeah. But the thing that really stood out to me is to monetize the passions and subsidize my hobbies. And it's just that's really stood out for me, because I feel like this year I've started to really nail that without even realizing it. With the ambassadorships at ARC and at X Therapy, I really like fitness and sport and stuff. So I've been able to subsidize those hobbies by becoming an ambassador with those places. And not that it was ever really the goal, but it was just like, it's cool that I've been able to do those things, and it doesn't have the stress of like having to pay to go to a gym and that kind of stuff. It's really, really exciting, and I'm able to promote local at the same time. So it feels good in more than one way. So I've been able to subsidize those hobbies and then monetize my passion for music and DJing and making people dance and be happy. So
that's awesome.
That's what I'll leave you with there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure chatting with you today.
Pleasure chatting with you, Chris.
All right, we'll catch you next time.
Absolutely.